everyone. Welcome to the next part of CSO Saturday. This is the Zoom In on Science portion where we learn about STEM professionals and their careers to understand the impact of their job in modern life. My name is CSO Ben from Verado High School here in Arizona. I'm personally excited to host today's session. So for all of us to enjoy this experience, please mute your microphones and post your questions at any time during the presentation in the chat box. We will be sure to have time after the slides to answer as many questions as possible. Today, we welcome Dr. Maureen Mulvihill, President and CEO of Actuated Medical, to share a little bit about her journey. Maureen, can you tell our participants a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. Hey, thank you everyone for having me. You know what, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see how this goes, right? So we want to share sound and we want to share the screen. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let me move you so I can see you guys too. Gotta have like a audience. I do so much better when I have the audience that I can see. But anyway, so hi, my name is Maureen and I am President and CEO of Actuated Medical. So I'm going to give you kind of a little bit about my journey, how I got here, got through school and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the company. I have some videos to show some of the products that we're developing, just so you guys can kind of get an idea of what medical devices look like and how they are developed. Now, Ben is going to take care of the chat. So Ben, if there's a question that you need me to stop and you need to ask that at that time, please stop me. And I'll be glad to stop where I'm at and answer any questions. Sometimes it's really nice to have that give and take as the presentation goes through. All right. Okay, so here we go. Maybe not. Okay. So as I said, I'm Maureen Mulvihill, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I moved to Bellefonte, PA about 15 years ago. And when I started the company, but little facts about myself, as I lived in the Netherlands, I was an exchange student for my senior year of high school. So when everyone's talking about going to the proms, I missed the prom, but I actually got to wear wooden shoes riding a bike. So you kind of like miss the prom, ride a bike with wooden shoes, which way does it go? I've spent 6 months in Japan and 17 months in Germany. I actually received my bachelor's degree, my master's, and my PhD all from Penn State. I just kept coming back. And then I founded a company 15 years ago, and we are now 22 employees, and I'm a recognized entrepreneur internationally and nationally. So in 2011, I was a finalist for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. There's lots of people that compete for this honor, and I was very honored to be a finalist. There's not many CEOs that can say they started a company when they were pregnant. And so I did. So that's kind of one of those things that's really interesting. I've participated in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, which is a phenomenal program to really help startup entrepreneurs or startup founders grow their companies. I was the Entrepreneur of the Year in Central Pennsylvania for what we call the Chamber of Business and Commerce. And we are a woman-owned small business, so we're certified. And so Capital One had a specific program to talk about email marketing, how to get your brand out there. And I came in second in their pitch competition. In 2016, I pitched at the Penn State entrepreneurial program, Invest Penn State program, came in second. I actually in 2017, got to go to India as a United States delegate for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. So that's pretty cool. I didn't have to pay for the tickets. What I love doing is talking to legislators and advocating. That means supporting small businesses, supporting high-tech small businesses. I talk to senators, I talk to Congress people. They're just like we are. They're all just people. They need to understand how things work on the small business side, on the high tech side. And this is actually me talking to the Senate Finance panel. And we're talking about how much money it takes for medical devices to develop from start to finish. The average medical device is somewhere between $15 and $20 million. to develop that. So there's a lot of money that's invested into a medical device for it to get to the market. I've got to go to the White House. We received what they call the Small Business Administration's Tibbetts Award. And in that, we got to go to the White House and receive that award. And it was we do a lot of contracts with National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health, and they under the Small Business Innovation Research Grants. And we got an award for that because our TubeClear system, and you'll see a video on TubeClear, was developed using National Science Foundation funds. And then just in 2020, I was the Life Sciences CEO of the Year. So life sciences is people that do medical devices, people that do vaccines, people that do diagnostics, all these different things that help people in hospitals and treating diseases and things like that. But in 2020, if we all remember COVID, right? And so my company pivoted our entire facility and started making personal protective equipment. And because of that, I received the CEO of the Year, which was kind of interesting. As you know, you would have thought that Pfizer CEO or Moderna CEO, but it had to be in Pennsylvania. And the Pfizer CEO got a different award. So all interesting. But anyway, I got to be on the big screen and give a little presentation about entrepreneurship, small business operations, medical device. Okay, so I want to kind of walk through the journey I just did there. So I was an exchange student my senior year of high school. I graduated high school from Fox Chapel High School, which is near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I got my first degree at Penn State in ceramic science and engineering. Then I started my master's degree. And when I was on my master's degree, my professor stopped me in the hall and said, "Hey, Maureen, do you want to go to Japan?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" So I went to Japan for about 6 months. And at that time, I also finished my master's degree, which was in solid state science. When I was working for the professor in Japan, Penn State actually offered him a job. And he said, "Maureen, would you come back to Penn State with me, get your PhD, and help me get my lab set up?" So I actually left Japan after only 6 months. I really wanted to be there for a year, but after 6 months, went back, got my PhD, and helped him get his lab started. Then that same professor who said, "Hey, Maureen, do you want to go to Japan?" He said, "Hey, Maureen, do you want to go to Germany?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, of course." So after I finished my PhD, I got on another plane and I went to Germany and spent 17 months in Germany as a Alexander von Humboldt Fellow in Stuttgart, Germany. When I was in Stuttgart, a person I had been working with via phone, I had never met the person, but I had talked to him many times on the phone. So what the lessons is always be polite with people on the phone because you never know when you're going to meet them again in your life. But anyway, so I was talking to this person on the phone, and what I didn't realize is he was interviewing me for a job. So he said, "Are you looking for a PhD job?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to Germany right now. I'll be looking when I get back sometime, 12 to 15 months from now." Well, about 12 months later, I got an email from his vice president, and he said, "We want to bring you on." So I left Germany, came back here, and I took a job in Massachusetts. And so the interesting part there is I wasn't in medical device yet, but that company did what they call adaptive optics. And so I think we all know what the Hubble Space Telescope is. But when the Hubble Space Telescope originally went up into space, they had not polished the mirror surface as well as it should have been. It was actually off by the hair of your head, like the thickness of a hair on your head is how they had missed polishing that mirror. So when it went up into space, it couldn't focus light. So they actually went to the CEO of Xynex when he was at another company, and they said to him, "How would you fix this?" And what he's designed were these little mirrors that were on the back of little actuators. And so the actuators push up and down and change the surface of the mirror and therefore correct the light wave. And so those 3 mirrors, articulating fold mirrors, what saved the Hubble, or what allowed the Hubble to focus light. And so the Hubble's been up there for probably about 30 years now. It was only supposed to be 10 years. But anyway, it's been bringing back beautiful, beautiful pictures of space ever since. But that gentleman, when he left the company he was at, he started a company called Zionetics. And he was the one I spoke to, and he's the one who hired me, and I started working for him. But what he taught me was how to use small business innovation research grants to grow a company, to build a company. And that's what my company is all about. I left there and I was director of research for another company in State College. And at that time is when I decided to found Actuated Medical. So Actuated, we develop medical devices that have motion, and that motion is electronically controlled. So you can move it up or down or forward and backwards. And then we use electronics to make sure that motion is controlled very, very well. So the company, the idea of the company is I was sitting in a doctor's office at Hershey Medical Center, which is in Pennsylvania. And we were talking about little actuators, little motion devices, about the size of grain of rice. And he says, Maureen, I don't need that actuator. I need the whole system FDA approved so that I can use it in my patients. And his patients were stroke victims. And so with a stroke victim, when there's a blood clot in the brain, they have about 6 hours to get into that part of the brain, break up that blood clot so that the patient doesn't have brain damage. So anyway, I went back to my boss and I said, hey, we need to do medical devices. There's something we can do. And he's like, I don't want to do medical devices. And I said, I want to do medical devices. So I quit that job and started this company. And the company is called Actuated Medical. So actuated means motion. And of course, we all know what medical means. So we're using innovative motion to produce positive patient outcomes. And that's the tagline. This is my incredible team. I have biomedical engineers, I have industrial engineers, I have polymer scientists, I have material scientists, I have acoustics, I have like one of everybody. So what I thought I would do here is I would share a little video about Actuated Medical so you can kind of see some of the facilities and see what we do. Can everyone hear this?
Actuated Medical is located about 6 miles from Penn State's main campus in a town called Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. And we develop medical devices that move in such a way that enhances the procedure. So all of our devices make things better for the clinician and also the patient. We put motion into medicine.
That backward and forward motion of the tip is what goes in there and breaks up the clog.
Our first product on the market is a device that clears clogged feeding tubes. We're just very centrally located. I can get to Cleveland Clinic in 4 hours. I can get to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in 4 hours. I can get to UPMC in Pittsburgh in 3 hours. So it's all about being located close to where our customers would be in those hospitals, but also the quality of people that work for us are just incredible individuals that love the quality of life here in Pennsylvania and love the idea of coming to work every day and making a difference and improving patient outcomes. As a small company, we have facilities to do a lot of benchtop testing, but we don't have facilities to do clinical testing or preclinical testing, and Penn State's there for us. We do a lot of small business innovation research grants with NIH and NSF, and Penn State's our partner for a lot of those grants. We're developing several devices for pediatrics or neonatal patients. We partner with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia to assist us in our clinical studies or evaluating our device. It's been an awesome relationship.
We are currently in development of other innovative devices for other target areas such as bone biopsy and spinal anesthesia, as well as epidurals.
We see us staying here in central Pennsylvania, and we see growing, maybe doubling in size within the next couple years.
So what I thought I'd do is show you some photos of the facility. And we have research and development, and what the two people are doing on the left image is they are looking at neural implants. And so if you've ever thought about brain computer interfaces where they're putting an electrode in the brain and they're trying to control the prosthetics movement, or they're trying to restore a stroke person's mobility, when they put those electrodes in, they use high force air to push them in, and using our technology where we're vibrating them, they're going in much smoother. And so what these two engineers are doing is they're taking these very small implants and figuring out how best to insert them into tissue like the brain or into nerves that are in your peripheral, like arms or legs and things like this. We have electronics engineers that work for us, and their focus is on how to take that motion and electrically control it so that it's very precise and very controlled. We have a controlled manufacturing area, which means that everything we do is compliant to the FDA. So the FDA has rules and the way things should be put together. One example would be is we do what they call transportation testing. And so you have to put it into the packaging materials and then shake it like it's in a truck going across the United States, or shake it like it's in an airplane going up into, taking off and then landing. Because when it gets to the hospital, you need to know that that device is going to work just as it was supposed to, meet the product specs that it had. The other part too is you can see that they're wearing garb across their heads and on their bodies, because you don't want, hairs and things like that in the final product. We have a machine shop, and our machinist is here, and he helps our engineers design the best devices that can be machined. He also helps them build fixtures. So as you put things together, you want to make sure they go together the same way every time. And that's where he develops devices that make sure that that happens. We have this in the controlled manufacturing. We have measurements that we need to do to make sure those products meet the specific product specifications that they need, because all of that data then goes to the FDA. And when the FDA approves a medical device, they have reviewed all of the test protocols, all the test data to make sure those devices work the same way every time. They're verified and they're validated.
The Tube Clear system is an FDA cleared and CE marked.
This is actually a short video on our first device that we developed and is on the market. And so the Tube Clear system is one of those devices where we had to do all that testing that I was just talking about. And then all that test data was sent to the FDA. And now this device is in 9 hospitals across the United States, and even a couple home care patients have purchased the unit.
Marked device designed to clear clogged feeding and decompression tubes. Due to conditions ranging from Alzheimer's disease to cancer to traumatic injury, many patients are unable to swallow and require tubes for nutrition, medication, or decompression. Unfortunately, these tubes often become clogged. Tube Clear helps clinicians quickly clear tubes without the risk, discomfort, and expense of tube removal and replacement. The system consists of 2 components. The single-use clearing stem is a flexible wire encased in a sheath. The reusable control box activates the clearing stem, causing the tip to quickly move forward and backward inside the sheath. This rapid movement breaks up and clears clogs inside the tube without removing the tube from the patient. Adopting this technology can both reduce patient discomfort and save a typical 500-bed hospital as much as $243,000 per year. Tube Clear is designed and manufactured in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania by Actuated Medical.
So I'm going to show you, Ben, how much time do I have?
You still have some time. We'll have some questions afterwards, but you're doing great.
Okay. All right. So this is another device that, so if you think about engineers and scientists, when you're starting to develop a medical device, you have to test it, because you can't automatically test it in a human, right? You want to make sure that the prototypes you're developing are something that they need. So the interesting thing here is this is a simulated neonatal patient's chest. And so what you have here, here's the 2 lungs of the patient. And so this would be your neonatal patient's lungs. But what the device is, it's an endotracheal suctioning system. And so when they put an intubation tube into the patient's throat, that starts filling up with mucus over time. And so the clinician needs to go in there and we'll say just vacuum out the mucus, like has to remove that mucus so the baby can breathe. And so what we're showing here is the Ballard suction catheter is that we'll say vacuum that goes in and takes out the mucus. Right now, what they're doing to neonatal patients, right? So we're talking about babies that were born before 40 weeks. So they're going in there and they're suctioning out that mucus. But our Baby Gentle Clear is a more gentle way to do this. So the first part here is you want to look at the fact that, okay, so not only do we have to do the device, but we have to design the model to test in. And then once you get the model to test in, and then you have to work. So as this video goes, watch these little neonatal lungs here and the neonatal lungs here. And I'm going to start this all over again. So you can see this is before the catheter is inserted, and the lungs are moving up or in and out. Now you have the insertion of the Ballard suction catheter. So look here, and then look at baby gentle stick. You can see that they're really compressing. And then with the Ballard suction catheter, it takes a long time for it to recover. See, look at the collapsing. When we showed this to the doctors, some of the doctors, they were shocked at how much those lungs collapsed. Okay, I'm going to show you one more device. And this is the device I was talking about where those two engineers were working on putting implants into the brain. This is with no vibration. You're moving it in, you're not moving it in and out. And this is with moving it in and out. So what you want to do is look at this surface right here on both of these images. So I'm going to start all over again. So you're watching this surface right here and this surface right here. Look at how much this goes in before the needles go in. And this, the dimpling is much lower here than here. And that's due to that precise controlled vibration that our technology is adding to the implant. And even the recovery here, you can see it's much less on that one. And that, once again, watch the surface. See the dimpling? So think about that. When you put needles in the brain, you don't want them to dimple. You want them to go in and you want them to hit the target they're supposed to hit. So now these implants, as I said before, are going to be used to control perhaps prosthetics, give somebody who has a stroke more mobility, things like that. All right, one more video. So when COVID hit, as I said, we repurposed our facility and we started doing PPE, and that's what this video is about.
Actuated Medical was founded by Maureen in 2006 with the mission to design and develop medical devices and components. They use actuation technologies to address a wide variety of medical challenges ranging from clearing occlusions to easing tissue penetration to enabling MRI-assisted procedures. But in March of 2020, Maureen and her team learned, as many of us did, about the dangerous shortage of PPE that rapidly emerged in hospital and other healthcare settings. Within a matter of days, Actuated Medical repurposed its manufacturing facility in Center County to begin producing face shields to support an effort by Life Sciences Pennsylvania and the Hospital Association of Pennsylvania to redirect these crucial supplies to healthcare providers and first responders. For this, we consider the Actuated Medical team to be heroes of COVID-19.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude with a couple, like 2 more slides. So people always say, you know, do you have any advice? So my advice to all of you is be persistent because you can do it. Don't ever let anyone tell you, yeah, you can't do it. Just be persistent, work hard, and you can accomplish anything you want. So this was kind of a cool little illustration I just found as I was Googling, you know, the word persistence, and it was so perfect for what we're talking about. So people look at you and they say, oh, look how successful that person is. Or you're in school and you're like, wow, look at how successful that student is or how successful they are. But what you don't know is what it took for them to get to that point. And so you think about an iceberg and you always say iceberg 20% is above the water, but there's 80% below the water. So what you don't see is the persistence it took to get to that success. All the times they did fail and they recovered, the sacrifices they made and what they had to do to get over those disappointments, but you don't see how much dedication and hard work and discipline and all those things it took. So as my advice to all of you is be persistent and know that you can do it. But when you look at other people, don't forget that there's so much more that took them to get to where they are, that you can do it too. So don't let failure stop you. And that's my talk. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. I think we have a few questions that people posted in the chat. If you have a few more minutes.
Sure.
But first, I have a quick question before we get to those. How important were your mentors when you were growing up and going through school?
They're very important. The mentors are the ones that can help give you advice. They can, as you get ideas, you can bounce the idea off of them. Do they think it's a good idea? I would also say that as a CEO, people always want to give me advice, and I always listen to the advice. I absorb it. If it will help me, I use that advice, and if it won't help me, I just let it go. So not everyone gives you the best advice. So you need to think about the advice and see if it works for you before you act on it. But mentors are extremely important.
Another question we have in the chat is, what motivated you to start your own company and get into entrepreneurship?
Okay, so I think I was always an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what the word meant, right? So when I was 9, I got a paper route, and I was delivering papers with my brother, and he didn't like collecting the money, and I didn't mind collecting the money. So he would deliver the newspapers and I would collect the money. And it was a great partnership with us. And it taught me the skills of how to collect money from people that didn't want to pay you, right? So there's things you learn on the business side. But yeah, so that's really it. Ask your question again, Ben.
The question was, what motivated you to start your company and get into entrepreneurship?
Okay, so I was always an entrepreneur, which was the newspaper story. But I was actually sitting in that doctor's office, and we were talking about the little micro actuators. So I was working for a company that was doing micro actuators, little motion devices about the size of a grain of rice. And after talking to him, I'm like, wow, there's something we can do. We can make a change and help patients. So I went to my boss and I asked him, hey, let's make medical devices. And he says, I don't want to. So I went home and I said to my husband that we need to start a company because there's something we can do here. And that was over 15 years ago.
Another question that we have in the chat is, how long are these products typically in development before you can start to market and commercially sell them?
Oh, that's an awesome question. It really depends on the complexity of the device. So Tube Clear was actually a very simple device compared to some. And that was probably 4 years of development. But the average medical device takes 9 years from concept to adoption or sales. And it costs somewhere over $15 million. So it really depends on how complex the device. I have another friend who owns a company, and they're 20 years and they're just doing the first few patients. So it really depends on how complex the device is or what type of FDA approval you need. Because there's some FDA approvals, it's a 510K, and you say, I'm very similar to this device, and you test to show you're just as safe and just as effective as that device. But then there's other devices that you have to do all the safety testing. And that safety testing could be animal research, or it could be human clinical trials. Like for Tube Clear, we're only cleared for adults. We're not cleared for pediatrics because the FDA wants to see 15 pediatric patients. So we're still working on the pediatric indication. So it could take years.
Wow, that's interesting. Another question that we have in the chat is, what product or project are you most proud of and why?
I think at this point it's still Tube Clear. So here's a couple Tube Clear stories, right? So Tube Clear's competition is warm water in a syringe. So if we step back and you look at your kitchen sink, and I hope you've all helped your parents if their sink clogs, right? So you try to put warm water down a clogged sink, it doesn't work. You try to put Drano or some chemical down there, and it takes 30 minutes and it's still not clear and you got to do it again. Or you put some mechanical device down there like a roto-rooter or a snake, and that clears the drain. So Tube Clear's competition is warm water and a syringe, which is what nurses have been doing for 50 years. They also use, I call a biocompatible Drano, as an enzyme that goes in there, but it only clears the protein, so the formula. It doesn't clear the medications. But Tube Clear is a mechanical device which goes down into the tube and clears it. So we're more effective than our competition. Now, during COVID, as I mentioned, you guys, we are not FDA cleared for pediatrics. We're only cleared for adults. But pediatric doctors can use any device they would like. It's called off-label use. So we had a doctor call us in the middle of COVID and said, I have a pediatric patient whose feeding tube has been clogged for 8 days. So we overnighted the system to him. He trained via video, and 2 hours later, he emailed us and said, thank you so much. My patient's tube is open again, and the patient avoided surgery. That's a great day, right? We saved that child from surgery. We have a patient who's using the device, and he's an elderly man, and his family's nurse, the home care nurse, is coming in and using it. Because when he gets a clogged feeding tube, they have to then take him to the hospital. And when you're really elderly and they take you from the environment you know to an environment you don't know, it really is not comfortable. It's not good for your psyche, right? It's just not good for your mental health. And so we feel so good when they use our device so they don't have to take him to the hospital. So Tube Clear is an awesome device. It's just very hard to get clinicians to change the way from where they were what they were doing before to what they should do now.
Yeah, those are incredible stories.
Thank you.
Where would you like to see your company in the next 10 years?
Oh, I love it. So we're a product innovator. And so each of our technologies, we want to get them to the point that a large medical company buys that technology from us and gets it to more patients. So we're a small company and we're not a sales company. So we can only have few patients, a couple hundred, couple thousand use our device. But what we want is thousands of people to use our device. And so we'd like to see at least 3 of our technologies licensed out or acquired by larger companies so that we can increase adoption of the technologies. So that's kind of where our goal is, to really push out our products and get them acquired so that more patients are helped.
Awesome. And we have a question from CSO Simon. What other products for other medical reasons have you also made?
So I showed you guys a few of them, right? So we have Tube Clear to clears feeding tubes. In development, we have a device that clears upper GI bleeds. So it's a device for endoscopes. So it goes down with the endoscope, and when there's bleeding in the stomach, it breaks up those blood clots and absorbs that. That's under development. It's not on the market. We have another device called Grip Tract, and it fits on the end of an endoscope, and it has, we'll say, little fingers, and those fingers allow doctors to manipulate the tissue while they're doing colonoscopies. That's in development, but that's very close to the FDA. We have another product called Baby Gentle Stick. And you remember when you fell when you were little and your mom said, rub it, rub it, rub it? Well, our device is doing a similar thing. So neonatal patients, let me make sure I get this right. So if you think about this being the heel of a neonatal patient, they often cut it to take a blood sample, and they have to do this often for neonatal patients. And so our device rubs this area and then it lances or makes that cut all in one system. And that is being clinically tested at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Ohio, and also Penn State Children's Hospital here in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So that's pretty exciting technology too. The data so far looks very promising. And I think we all can agree we don't want our little babies in pain.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your company. Before we close this call, we have one final question. What advice would you give to us as young leaders for our future?
I think I gave it on that one slide, right? Be persistent, work hard, and don't let anyone tell you you can't do it. you know you can do it, you do it. And always remember that if you look at somebody and say, look how successful they are, I'm never going to be that successful. You don't know what was below the waterline and how much work they had to put in there. So you need to put in that work and be successful. Don't compare yourself to someone else. Be persistent.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for supporting the Chief Science Officer program from around the world. You truly are an inspiration to many of us, and we hope that you can participate in another call someday as we continue our Zoom In on Science calls.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, guys. Good luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Maureen.